Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, what's going on? Sean here, and you are stuck with just me again today. Thank you for tuning in. Although Kyle's bike ride has come to an end and he is safe, he's not quite back at his computer yet, so he's not sitting down with me today. However, you're going to get a bit of a hybrid conversation, a little bit of him and a little bit of me. Early on in Kyle's bike ride, we were able to touch base on a phone call, and we recorded that conversation so we can play it for you in this episode. Upon listening to the conversation, I realized that there were a few really strong principles that were discussed that we weren't able to really dive into. So what you'll get beyond the phone call are a few sidebars from me. I'm going to take out just a few of those principles and dig in just a little bit deeper. They are fantastic and relevant topics for our podcast, and personally, I find a lot of value in diving in just a little bit to these principles. So hopefully you find some value in it as well, and overall, I hope you enjoyed this episode and the conversation between me and Kyle. Kyle is calling in from I don't even know where, so we're just starting the conversation. Kyle, catch us up to speed. Where are you at, and how's the ride going so far?
We are on day 12 of our bike trip. We've got about 25 days, so we're about halfway through. It's a rest day today in the thriving metropolis of Pierce, Idaho. There's 500 people in this town. They've got a restaurant, a laundromat, a post office, and 2 saloons.
Oh, wow.
So it's a pretty awesome place. There's a bunch of like ATV and motorcycle riders around here because there's lots of really good trails, I guess, for motorcycle riding, and it's sort of a thoroughfare for one of the popular motorcycle routes through Idaho.
Nice.
And we're about to hit that. It's the Magruder Corridor, and it's a bunch of crazy climbs through the mountains of Idaho.
Have you guys been seeing any motorcyclists or no?
We actually have seen one group of 3 guys and one solo guy. That we were on the road one day on a section of actual pavement, and we saw a guy who had started in Washington, D.C. And so he'd been on the road for quite a few weeks now, and he was just doing the coast to coast solo.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
So you're halfway through. Has it been everything you wanted or hoped it would be? Has it been a great ride, eye-opening? Would you do it again? What are your thoughts so far?
It's been very eye-opening. I have never done a whole lot off-road like we talked about before, and the trike is about a third or maybe even less as fast on gravel or unpaved than a regular bike. And so all the other guys on regular bikes, and I'm just working my butt off all day to go like 3 miles an hour, so it's been a lot tougher than I thought it would be. And I mean, the reason I didn't really have any reason to think it would be any easier. I just didn't really know until now. So we've been doing like 10-hour days. Like, it's not
Jeez.
uncommon to do a 10-hour day and get like 40 miles.
Wow.
And, adjusting the expectations to do that, I think, has been the biggest shift. Like, now we're expecting to go out and do a 8 to 10 hour day.
Sure.
And we're expecting to travel at 3 to 4 miles an hour all day and get a little assist up the hills and stuff like that. But whereas before it was just really, it's still frustrating, but before it was like frustrating because it was a change in expectations, right? And now we
Sure.
know what to expect. So
Mm.
so that's a good thing, I think, just to kind of get in the flow and to understand what's required.
Sure. Hey, Sean here, and I want to sidebar just briefly. There are many things in this conversation that are pretty powerful, principles that are applicable to life, even beyond such a bike adventure like this one. Kyle is talking about the ride and how frustrating some of those early days were for the team, because even though they planned and prepared and they got all the ducks in a row that they possibly could, there was so much to this adventure that they just couldn't know until they were in the midst of it. And isn't that true for life? We plan so much, so carefully. We think about marriage, we think about kids, we save for college, all these different elements. But then life throws a curveball. Maybe a disease you didn't see coming. Maybe a change in a relationship that you didn't expect. Who knows? But really, what Kyle is saying here is it's easier to understand, it's easier to navigate when you are able to change your expectations, which not necessarily put your guard down or change your goal or, back off what might be important to you, but rather make the adjustments that might be required in order for you to capture the win that you're after, or to conquer the mountain that you're up against, or to experience a level of success, whatever that might look like for you. We're all gonna have hard days. When we're up against those challenges or up against that really tough hill, the last thing we should do is give up. Instead, let's reassess, make a few tweaks, and move after the outcome that's important to you. Well, it's impressive to see how far you guys have come and how far you even have so far to go still. So that's still kind of crazy. Talk to us.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say we've come like almost 400 miles, and we have more than 400 miles to go.
Yeah,
So,
that's crazy.
but it's just a matter of getting on the trike and grinding it out every day, like we
Right.
do. I think it's sort of a life lesson, if you will. Just keep going. And I mean, some of these climbs, it's like you're climbing for 6 hours, going 3 miles per hour, and
Jeez.
I would be lying if I didn't think many times, like, what the hell are we doing out here? This is
Right.
not even fun. But then you get to the top of the climb and it feels all worth it. All that pain is in the past, and all those thoughts are in the past, and you're looking at an incredible view that you and your team earned. And it's like, oh yeah, that was tough, but it was worth it. So yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to talk to the rest of my team who's sitting there waiting on me to, go up the hill at 3 miles an hour, but it feels worth it when we get to the top.
Yeah. Do you get the impression they are surprised? I mean, did they expect to move pretty slow given the trike or just given the terrain?
I think they expected it, but I don't I don't think any of us foresaw how extreme it would be. So,
Sure.
for example, like we're riding down a road that is sort of a double track, like Jeep trail, right?
Okay.
And these guys, like the guys on a two-wheeled bike, they're able to ride right down the middle of the track of
Hmm.
the Jeep or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
so it's one line, they just go right down the middle. Well, I've got three tires that are not in line.
Hmm.
So I've got two tires, each on like loose gravel on the outsides. I've got my one, you know, pretty good contact with the ground on the in the middle, but I'm basically riding through like soft gravel. And, no one would ever choose to do that. That's why you ride in the middle, right? But
Yeah.
but it's impossible to
Hmm.
not do that on the strike. So that's a little bit of an illustration of the difficulty and like just all these different terrain conditions. It's been tough to it's been frustrating, I feel like, to understand that if I wasn't on the trike, that I feel like I'd be able to go a lot faster.
Sure.
So that's been really tough, and sometimes it's you can't help but blame yourself, right? Like, why can't
Hmm.
I keep up? This is like I am so lame. But then it's like, wait, no, it's FA,
Yeah.
and FA is causing the trike. It's not my fault. It's no one's fault.
Sure.
And this is just a thing that the team has to bear as a team.
I bet you saw this call out coming. It's almost like Kyle is preaching right here. I bet we've all been there. We question ourselves, we wonder, what did I do wrong? Why did this happen to me? What could I have done different? We blame ourselves, especially in the world of disability and rare disease. We've had these conversations almost 200 episodes. This is one of those questions that's always plays around in people's mind, especially when they're first diagnosed. My parents did it. I've done it. Kyle's doing it even just last week. We've all been there. And the reality of it is, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Your inability to run, it's not your fault. The difficulty you have in speaking clearly, it's not your fault. Having to utilize a mobility aid, it's not your fault. Having to rely on other people to help get you through those basic activities of daily living, it's not your fault. I'm reminded of the conversation we had with Patrick James Lynch back in episode 163. He used the analogy of poker, or playing poker. We can't control the cards that we are dealt. Nobody knows what the next card is. We can only play the hand we're dealt. Sure, there are things you can do to maybe minimize risk, but there is nothing you can do to change the reality of what you're up against today. But that doesn't mean you have to accept it as the only possible way. It doesn't have to be the definitive, finite end. And most certainly, your disease, your condition, your disability, those things should never define who you are or what you can accomplish.
And when I can get my head in that spot, then I think less about how terrible I am,
Yeah,
and more about fighting against the challenges in my life that you know that I need to get over to finish this trip and just get along in life, I guess, right?
sure. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about the start. I know, a bunch of us saw online you got pretty sick the first day or two. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I went with Team Determinants up White Mountain a few years ago, I experienced a little bit of stomach trouble because of the freeze dried meals that we were eating. And
Yeah.
I didn't really attribute it to that as much. And it was only a 2-3 day trip or something like that.
Sure.
And, this time, super intense days, the first 2 days. And I'm eating everything. I mean, like, I ate like 8 Cliff Bars a day and then just freeze dried meals at night.
Wow.
And, they're not cooked optimally.
Right.
And so how it gets, like they're a little bit crunchy and like so, and they're super super salty and they taste pretty good, right? But
Right.
the taste is really intense, and so anyway, it just wreaked havoc on my stomach. And the third day, I just totally it stopped me in my tracks. Like I I couldn't go any farther, and I had people, two of my teammates, help me out on my trike. I laid on the ground and was just like shivering, and it was not cold out, and
Oh.
so I didn't ride that day. They finished the day. Oh my gosh, somebody got word, and they called an ambulance, and an
Oh.
ambulance actually came up with its lights flashing to
Okay.
where we were, and I had to sign this little paper that said that I didn't need them to take me to the hospital.
Oh.
I was perfectly stable. I just didn't feel good, but at that point, I didn't know why.
Right.
Um, and so, I posted to my story that I think it's the freeze dried meals. One of my friends texted me and he suggested, he's like, freeze dried meals are terrible. He's like, just eat chicken and rice with like a little bit of seasoning and you'll be fine. And so that's what I've been doing is chicken and rice for dinner. That's it. Big old bowl of rice with some chicken in it, um, and it's been a lot better. I don't think my stomach is 100%, but I don't think it will be. I think it's like 90-95% right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
I'm
and
glad you're feeling better and it wasn't anything that totally derailed the entire trip.
yeah, I know. I mean, we tested for COVID because that was obviously one of the big fears, right? But
Right.
did not test positive, so it was a matter of waiting it out and seeing what happened. I mean, I was probably 80% by the next day,
Sure.
so I that made me fairly confident that we could figure it out. And so, I went to the store and bought like a bunch of uh like dried fruit and nuts and just like a little bit more regular food than just like Cliff Bars and goo packets and freeze dried meals. So I'm just
Yeah.
trying to eat a little more regular food.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess nutrition. I don't know why, but I just figured, oh, I'll be fine. I'll just eat whatever. But no, I really needed to, hone in on I think I needed to like eat Cliff Bars and freeze dried meals for 3 days and see how it went.
Sure.
I
Sure.
didn't do that. So
Uh,
the rest days have been essential. So yesterday I didn't ride. So we have a support vehicle now. One of the guys on our team, his ankle was injured. One of the tendons in his ankle started giving him a lot of trouble, and he couldn't ride anymore. So he went home and grabbed the truck, and now we have a truck with us. And so, like, for example, I didn't ride yesterday. They had a 60-mile day to be able to get to our location for our or our rest day. And if I would have ridden, it would have been 60 miles at 3 miles an hour.
Sure.
So, that's 20 hours. And obviously that wasn't going to work. And so, I think one of the lessons I learned also is just like I had my mind set on the concept of unassisted journey, completely self-sustained, and where we carry all of our stuff with us and accept no help outside. And come to find out 3 or 4 days in, like, that is just for me in my situation and for the team. When I'm the only one in a trike and all this stuff, that just is not sustainable.
Sure.
And it wasn't an option.
I'm willing to bet you can relate to this one as well. Sometimes we get independence a little confused. We think that means complete, unassisted anything ever. And the reality of it is that doesn't work well for anybody in life, even the most perfectly abled individual. We all do life better when we share it with the other people. No matter who you are or what you're up against in life, we all need help. And being independent doesn't necessarily mean you're 100% on an island and you're going to be just fine, but it means having the ability to make some decisions every now and then that might put you in a challenging position, but challenges you to try, challenges you to attempt. And what I love about having this conversation with Kyle, in my opinion, he's the perfect example of somebody living beyond his circumstances, going against the grain, and playing the cards that he's been dealt.
It's still really, really hard. Every day on the brink of like, what are we doing here? This is insane.
Sure.
And so, it's nice to have that support. And I think my mind has changed from the concept of completely unsupported and accepting no help, right? Partly, I didn't know how crazy or how reasonable it was, but now we do, and we've learned a lot in the first 2 weeks, and we're going to carry that with us through the rest of the trip.
So. Yeah, good. Well, it's great to hear you guys are making progress. You've learned a couple things along the way, and that you're everybody is safe and healthy, and getting through those 10-hour days as I guess as quickly or as easily as possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we really relish the 7-hour days, 6-7-hour days, because then we can hang out at camp and hang out together.
Sure.
When we're going 9-hour days, it's just a matter of like, all right, let's get the camp set up so we can go to sleep. We've been going to sleep at like 8 p.m.
Jeez.
And because everyone's exhausted, like you can't even speak at the end of the day,
You're right.
And so the 6-7 hour days are really nice when we can like actually sit around at camp and like talk for a second or whatever.
Sure.
So yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
What meal are you looking forward to when you get home?
I have decided that when I get home, I'm going to eat a lot more ice cream.
Okay.
It's been so hot out here. Oh my gosh. And like every once in a while, they're crazy about huckleberries around here. This is like a huckleberry hotspot all through here. And everywhere we go, there's huckleberry ice cream or huckleberry milkshake. So I'm gonna eat more ice cream when I get home, I think.
Good. All right. Something to look forward to. Well, I'm looking forward to you getting back and getting on the routine and being, of course, on the podcast for the rest of our season 8. Thanks for calling in today and making a little bit of time on your rest day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good to talk to you, brother.
Yes, sir. Be safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your day off and get some rest.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, dude.
Thanks,
we'll
Sean.
talk
soon.
Talk
to you later.
Man, so much good stuff in there. Hopefully you agree. The only regret I have is not being able to dig in a little bit deeper with Kyle on the phone with me or at the mic. Kyle's going to be back on the mic here pretty soon, so we look forward to tackling the rest of Season 8 with you. Of course, in the meantime, I'm going to close this out with a couple thank you notes. In Kyle's stead, I've got to. First up, I'm going to say thank you to my co-host, Kyle Bryant. Not only is he an incredible friend and just a good person to be around, I also am grateful for the example he leads and lives for people like me, whether it be others in the rare disease community or just people that maybe find it hard to move forward in the midst of tough situations. So, Kyle, I appreciate the legacy in this regard that you are living out. Thank you. I'm also going to say thank you to my insurance company, although most of you probably recognize that this is a thing. I had no idea. A few months ago, I got a really bad impact from a rock on my windshield that caused quite a crack. Not just a chip that could be repaired, but a crack that caused the windshield to need to be replaced. I made a couple phone calls and realized a new windshield was going to cost me about $1,100. It's a newer car, it's got cameras, so you've got to pay to get all that stuff realigned. And, you know, I knew it'd be pricey, but I was thinking more like, I don't know, $700. Anyway, after a little bit of waiting and just not making it a priority, I decided, you know, I'm going to call my insurance and just see, do I have any kind of coverage that would help with this? Turns out I got a new windshield for $50. I have no idea how it works, if it's like once every 5 years or whatever it may be. This was the first time I leaned on my insurance company to replace the windshield, and turns out they have a program, so I got the windshield replaced a few days later. So thank you, Safelite. Safelite Repair, Safelite. Anyway, and also thank you, Geico. Of course, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to having Kyle back on the mic with me soon so we can keep talking at you. In the meantime, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.